Did you know that the gymnastics governing body, called the Federation of International Gymnastics, is the oldest sport organization in the world? Gymnastics is a sport that combines strength, grace, flexibility, and balance. Sports in general are a big part of most people's life. So today I want to share with you a little bit about one of the most popular sports women participate in. This is a sport I used to compete in as a child and I continue to love everything about. Therefore, today I'm here to inform you on the sport of women's artistic gymnastics. First, I'll examine the background of this sport. Then I'll explore the differences between the elite and the NCAA systems. And finally, I'll look at the pros and the cons of practicing the sport. First, let me begin by explaining a little bit about the history of the women's gymnastics. Since ancient times, Greek philosophers like Plato have argued that gymnastics is a great way to teach important health and life lessons. However, since those times, the sport has evolved tremendously. The new era of elite gymnastics as we know it today began around 200 years ago in the Olympic Games of Athens in 1896. From this point forward, gymnastics continued to progress into a more and more competitive sport, focusing on balancing artistry and acrobatics. The rising popularity of women's artistic gymnastics in the US has exponentially grown since 1996 when the Magnificent Seven became the first ever team to win Olympic gold in gymnastics. It became such a phenomenon that, according to journalist Anna Crimson in her article, A Journal of Women in Culture and Society, published in 2001, during the 1996 Summer Olympics, the NBC broadcasted more than 9.5 hours of women's artistic gymnastics competition. This constituted more than 1/4 of the total time devoted to both men and women's sports combined. And this historic win marked the beginning of a long era of US gymnastics champions to come. In fact, since 1996, the US has never been lower than third in any team or individual or round competition. Now that you know how artistic gymnastics started, next I'll describe the differences between the NCAA and the elite system. On the surface, the elite and the NCAA system surely can look similar, but at their core they're very different. On the one hand, we have the elite competition system. This is the one we're all accustomed to watch during the Olympics. Like the name suggests, it's reserved for the best of the best because of the scoring system. This is the major difference between the two. In elite, scores are composed of two aspects, the difficulty and the execution score. These two are added to create a final score. And the second aspect that sets these two competition levels apart is their focus and athletes' individuality. To compete at the elite level, gymnasts have to be able to compete all four events because for the most part, competitions don't have a team component. On the other hand, the NCAA system, or college gymnastics competition circuit, is very different. In contrast to the elite, here scores are given out of a perfect 10. Then judges will deduct from it. Hence, the difficulty is not as important as it is in elite. At NCAA level, the emphasis is on perfection rather than difficulty. Moreover, in collegiate gymnastics, it's all about the team over self mentality. According to sports journalist Blythe Lawrence on her article for ESPN in 2014, the overall team total is the most important, with an NCAA team title being the ultimate victory. Unlike in the other system, each gymnast only competes their best event to build up the highest team score possible. I just discussed with you the difference between the two systems gymnasts can compete in. So now I'll explain the benefits and the risks associated with the sport. Gymnasts train every single part of their body to be able to perform the skills required. Thus, they are at risk of hurting all ligaments, all muscles, and all bones. In fact, among women's sports, women's gymnastics has had the highest overall injury rate at 10.4 per 1,000 in injured athletes, as reported by the CDC in the research on college-related injuries in the U.S. from 2009 and 2014, published in 2014. Consequently, the biggest issue is between balancing the competitive nature of the sport and a healthy body. Additionally, the demanding nature of a sport from a very young age is a concerning factor for most parents because gymnasts peak in their careers between the ages of 16 and 18, and by age 10, most of them are training more than 40 hours a week. Regardless of the dangers, gymnastics still remains a very popular sport for girls. Dr. Steele and Dr. White, on their investigation about injury prevention in female gymnasts in March of 1986, concluded that gymnastics gives those with smaller, lighter bodies a chance to be highly successful in a highly competitive sport because it allows for them to perform better and avoid injuries. Furthermore, because of the competitive nature of the sport, gymnasts focus on perfection. It allows athletes to develop endurance, discipline, dedication, resilience, and teamwork skills. Additionally, gymnasts who get to compete at elite level are usually recruited by top-level universities. Now that you know what the advantages and the disadvantages of gymnastics are, let's wrap it up. First, I examined the background of women's artistic gymnastics. Then I explored the differences between the elite and the NCAA system. And finally, I looked at the pros and the cons of practicing the sport. Through my speech, I hope you learned about the sport of women's artistic gymnastics. Lastly, for those who still believe that gymnastics is not a sport, you better think about it twice.